Great. Well, I'm looking forward to today's discussion. For everybody that doesn't personally know Nancy, Nancy Picard is a member here at the AJC, has been in and out of the Valley for how many years again, Nancy?
2004.
Cool. So for quite some time, 16 years, if my math is correct. Nancy, as a professional, is a certified integrative life coach through the Ford Institute for Transformational Learning, or training rather. She is also certified as a breakthrough shadow coach, an empowered parent coach, a courage coach, a healing your heart coach, a leadership coach, a holistic lifestyle coach, and of course, with the title of her book, also a bigger, better, and braver coach. The book, Up and Coming, Bigger, Better, Braver, Conquering Your Fears, Embrace Your Courage, and Transforming Your Lives, hits stores officially on July 14th, but can actually be pre-ordered at this time on Amazon. And I couldn't think of a more relevant topic to the tumultuous times that we're going through. I'm glad to have Nancy with us today. Prior to her work as a coach, she was a coach of a different sort. She owned and operated a personal training gym. She knows what it takes to help people achieve big goals and holds multiple personal training certifications, which has focused on health and wellness for almost 20 years. Her path towards coach was a natural evolution. She has a BS in psychology and an MS in education, and she lives by example. In 2017, she traveled alone in Thailand and Vietnam and undertook her biggest challenge, climbing Kilimanjaro at the age of 61. Coaching others to step out of their fear and into bigger versions of themselves is her passion. And you can always learn more about Nancy on her website, which we'll share just at the very end of today's session. But Nancy, thank you again for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You're in California right now, is that right?
I am for a few more days.
Cool. And then do you head this way?
Eventually, I head there.
Yeah. Good, good. Well, moving, I know, is a big adventure. I think Kilimanjaro probably outweighs that a little bit. Could you speak to what inspired you to climb Kilimanjaro at a later stage in life?
Sure. So I was turning 60, and which was a big number, and I wanted to mark it with something really outside my comfort zone. So traveling alone was outside my comfort zone, and climbing Kilimanjaro seemed like this big spiritual event that would mark it. And that's what I did.
Nice. Did you have a specific high and low from the trip that you'd care to share with us?
Sure. So the high was the pinnacle, just getting to the summit and making it and knowing that I made it and I didn't get sick or I didn't get hurt and I didn't have to come down, was a spiritual experience for me, and it was life fulfilling, and it really made me know my own worth and know that I could set out to do with something and follow through and stay in alignment with my dreams and my goals. So I would say that was the high. And the low is probably at the very end of it, when I got back to my place and saw what my body looked like from all of the altitude and the pounding and so that was the low. I had the high and the low, and it was well worth everything I did.
Cool. I know personally that taking on a big mission, if you will, always has such a great sense of accomplishment, and also can help kind of inspire us to conquer other challenges in life. I imagine writing Bigger, Better, Braver was probably a bit of a challenge. How long exactly did you spend writing the book?
Well, I was already writing the book when I was training for the trip, because I thought that I was going to write a book about what's your Kilimanjaro, which is sort of the theme still, but I thought it really was going to be about my whole process of being a woman in their 60s climbing Kilimanjaro. So I was journaling and talking into a microphone for from 2016, because that's when I was training. I went in March of 2017. So it was really 61 by the time I actually went. So that's when I started. And then it's been a work in progress ever since. Seriously. I mean, obviously the last year and a half has just been huge. So
Fair enough. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what the book is about without giving away too much?
yeah, it's not like a fiction book. I can give it away. It's fine. So it's really a process of my learning as a coach and also my clients. And so it's a step-by-step process of somebody uncovering their vision, what it looks like to them to live bigger, better, braver. They don't have to climb Kilimanjaro. It can be anything that will make them feel like they want to be bigger, better, braver. And then it's a step-by-step, how to uncover your vision, how to get out of autopilot so you can see actually what you're resisting, what your excuses sound like, how to make a plan, and then how to learn how to stay in alignment with your action steps so you actually get to where you want to go, regardless of whether it's a new job or a new partner or getting out of a relationship or getting out of a job. It doesn't matter what your vision looks like to you. But that's what that's all about. And I don't know why, but the only thing I can see right now is my girlfriend Jill in the picture. So anyway, and I'm a shadow coach. And so without going into huge detail, what shadow work is all about, it's helping you uncover the disempowering beliefs that are in your subconscious that you have from your childhood. So you're not aware of them, but they hold you back because your child self wants to play small and you can't be bigger, better, braver if you're staying small. So I help you uncover those beliefs that are running your operating system so you can actually move forward. So it's a whole process. It has exercises, meditations, centerings, the whole way through the book. And you can do them in the book, or there's also a companion journal that will be coming out where you could be writing all your answers because the questions will also be in that.
Neat.
So basically that's it.
Neat. The disempowering beliefs from childhood, is that similar to fear, or are the two different in nature?
Well, your fears develop in childhood. So your fears are behind your beliefs. Like you might have a fear that you need to stay small, but you also have a belief that you need to stay small to stay safe, or you need to be quiet to be safe, or I need to control everything to feel safe. We have a lot of, our inner critic wants us to stay safe. So basically it tries to keep us in a small box. But if you want to actually have a bigger, better, braver life, you have to uncover all of those beliefs, whatever they are. I can give you an example if you want of a shadow belief.
Please, yeah.
You like one? Okay. So I'll give you one of my biggest ones. So when I was about 50 years old, I was in a car accident and I ended up with PTSD from this accident. And I did a session with a shadow coach to try to see what about the accident was sort of upsetting something in my subconscious. So she took me down into my meditation garden and she had me walking around looking for some sub-personality that was going to come up in my consciousness. And I saw myself at 5 years old when I had been playing with a lighter and the piano keys went up and my party dress went up and I went up in flames. And my mother finally heard me scream from another room and she came in and she put me out and I almost died that day. But I never even thought of it as being a big event because they were all first and second degree burns. I spent a week in the hospital. I didn't even get yelled at because they were so happy I was alive. And so I went on with my life like it was nothing. But here I was 45 years later, and this little girl was freaking out because here I was, I almost died again. And so my coach wanted to know, well, what does she want me to know? And so I sat there quietly and I said, she wants me to know that I'm not safe alone. Now that makes perfect sense for a 5-year-old who puts herself on fire. I wasn't I wasn't safe alone. But as a 45 or 50-year-old woman who is now divorced and could have a great, happy life, I still wasn't happy alone. I didn't feel safe. And the moment I uncovered that belief, that left. It like changed everything for me. I didn't have this clingy neediness that I needed to have a partner. I was happy to travel alone. I felt amazing in the life that I had. It changed everything for me.
Wow. Must have been a transformational moment for sure.
Yeah, it was. And these, I have to get off gallery view. And these are transformational moments for everybody who has them. I mean, that's what I do with my clients. I help them uncover these disempowering beliefs that are holding them back, but they don't even know they have them.
Yeah. What are other ways that we can help free ourselves from old ways of behaving, from old beliefs that we might have?
Well, working with your shadow beliefs is huge. Working with your underlying commitments that go along with shadow beliefs. So, like, for example, my shadow belief was that I was not safe alone, but my underlying commitment that I made to myself was I would never be alone. So, people have a zillion different underlying commitments. I will never make money important. I will never be in a marriage like my mother. So they stay single their whole life. They have all, so that these underlying commitments are keeping you from getting what you think you're committed to, but you always get the thing you're most committed to. So if you don't know what that is, if you need to feed a wound, then you can't go for long-term gratification because you always have to feed it with short-term gratification. So you may think you want a healthy, thinner body, but you're feeding a wound for self-gratification. So you can't go that route. You can't, you're always going to be sabotaging yourself.
Yeah.
So when you uncover those things, and when you learn what autopilot sounds like and feels like, so you know that you're actually mindlessly moving through life and you're not really mindfully living through life, you can make many changes, but you can't make them when you're in autopilot and you don't really recognize what's happening to you.
No, that's fair. Well, of course, with each of us in various places, we've all been experiencing different levels, I think, of fear and the unknown right now. Some of us have, those of us that live here in Aspen, I think, are very fortunate. The stay-at-home order is lifting a little bit. The whole time we've been able to get outside and enjoy the great outdoors, which for me has been, I think, just probably the most important thing of getting through this difficult period. For others that are still in areas where they're maybe a little bit more restricted or aren't able to enjoy kind of the wide spaces that we have out here, what words of advice would you provide to those that are truly riding that roller coaster during this time period?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that to me, I feel like Mother Nature has told everybody, go to your room and think about what you've done. So it's like a great wake-up call for all of us. How are we living our life, not just in the environment, but how are we living our life basically back on autopilot? And what changes are happening? Like, what are the gifts of COVID? Not just what are the losses in COVID, but to start to like change your mindset so you can actually look at what is working and what do you want to take with you in life after COVID. So that's one part, is to look for what's right instead of what's wrong. It changes your attitude. It gives you a chance to be uplifted and think about the positive. With that being said, everybody is not in the same boat. And you have to recognize that everyone's in their own boat. And so some people are having horrendous loss of lives, loss of, they're isolated, they're not getting out, they're so in fear that they can't move forward. And so if you're having a great loss and you're suffering great loss, the first thing you have to do is be okay with grieving. Grieving, you have to grieve. You have to go through it to get to the other side. And so have compassion for your feelings Don't try to rush through them. Don't try to push them away. Don't try to ignore them. Have them, feel
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
see what they're there to tell you. And nobody can give you a timeline when you need to get past that. But at some point, you do have to move forward. And looking for what's right instead of what's wrong is one way to do that. Another way is if you can get yourself past fear, then you can exchange uncertainty for possibility. I mean, just take it. My book is being launched in a few weeks, and I thought I was going to have a big party, inside at the Explorer Book Club, and I was going to go on a book launch. I had all these book launch, cities, and that's not happening. So I could be freaking out, or I could be saying, okay, well, I can do Zoom book launches. I can have a Zoom party. I mean, if you can get past what you're losing, you can think of such creative ways to move forward. So don't use COVID as an excuse to stop living your life bigger, better, braver.
Yeah. You spoke about grieving a bit, and as a Jewish professional, it's something that we always encounter from time to time, people who lose loved ones and need to grieve. And the Jewish tradition is so big in grieving within community, right? We have such a structure of 7 days and then 30 days, and you're surrounded by friends and family the whole time to kind of help you through the process. For those of us that don't, may live on our own or might not have family in our house, how do you encourage, or how would you suggest that one grieve in a more isolated way? Do you have any tips or tricks that you might suggest?
Well, Zoom is about as good as it gets. And I think that there have been so many, I participate with my boyfriend on a weekly basis with his family. He does Zoom games and Zoom dinners, and everyone's showing their food. And my sisters and I Zoom with my mother every Sunday morning. I do Zooms with friends. I mean, I don't feel disconnected in any way. And I think that that's one of the best things that you can do, because you've lost physical community, but you don't have to lose the community, the social aspect of the community.
Yeah.
And hopefully you won't.
That's very well said. I mean, we certainly have been using streaming technology for a while for our services. But when people have pointed out that it's time to get back to worshiping, our response, and I've seen others in the various religious communities say the same thing. We've been together as a community through streaming. It's not like we're getting back to it. Yeah, in person is no big deal. We can live through our virtual communities for the time being. So I definitely see a strong parallel between that. And I think whether it's Zoom or FaceTime, there definitely are lots of fun ways of connecting virtually these days. Like you had said, we had a game night with friends a couple of weeks ago, and it was quite a hoot to play some of these games that exist on Zoom. You can draw different things, and people judge you. It's kind of like being really together.
So it's all about being creative.
Yeah.
It's really all about letting go of fear, finding the positivity, making new ways of being together. And I actually think I've heard from so many of my clients that they're so much more connected than they were with their family, because people just weren't doing this.
Definitely. Well, you're touching upon family a bit. What words of advice would you have for parents out there that kids are struggling through this time period? And how would you encourage them to get beyond their fears and really live a bigger, better, braver life?
I think it's really the same concepts. You have to grieve what you're losing. So some kids are home. I mean, I have so many clients. I have clients who are, the 20-year-olds, and then I have clients that are the parents. And so on some level, they love having their children with them. And then again, they've got their children with them. So, it's people always say, I love the headlights and I love the tail lights of our kids. And So again, these kids have to recognize that this is unprecedented. It's never happened before. And yes, college might look different, or your job loss is different right now. I mean, these are definitely things that are happening. You can't ignore them. So you have to give them permission to grieve the loss. It's a real loss. I have friends who canceled their weddings. I have friends who canceled humongous trips. I know people who are losing their jobs. You know, restaurants are closing, stores are closing. These things are real. So you have to have compassion for the loss that you're having, but get creative. Like, don't use this as an excuse. Figure out different ways to move forward. And as far as little children go, using bigger, better, braver, to me, I have three, almost, I'm about to have my fourth grandchild, and my grandkids call me with Nana. Guess what I did today? That was bigger, better, braver. So I encourage parents to, like, not helicopter their children, not try to protect them, not try to help them from failing. Let them fail often. So they get to learn that the juice is in the journey. Like, make them feel good because they were bigger, better, braver, not feel good because they were successful. Because we want children, we want these generations of children to grow up being excited, to have like a growth mindset, to try new things, not have a fixed mindset where they only will do what they're already good at because they want to only be successful. So I think, you know, as a parent with young children, that's huge. And that's what I parent my clients in.
Yeah, I'm currently working with a cycling coach. And just yesterday, the little webinar that he did was on, he used failing, and he used an acronym for failing. First attempt in learning, right? We have to fail in order to move forward. I'd love to hear what one of your grandkids said about living bigger, better, braver.
Oh, the things that they're doing.
Yeah,
You know,
from
if they tried to ride the bike with out the two wheels, or if they climbed, like I had a big conversation because one of my grandchildren, we were at a park and she was climbing up this little wall, and this other little girl kept trying to do it, but she couldn't. She was afraid. And I went over, I tried to help her do it. But she kept getting scared and she wouldn't finish. And then my granddaughter was going up this, the fire pole, but she actually had a really like leap to get on the next one, and she was afraid to do it. We tried it a couple of times, and then we got in the car and we're leaving, and she said, instead of thinking about that one, she said, well, that little girl, like, she was afraid. And I said, I know, she was afraid. She wasn't being bigger, better, braver, kind of like you, Kaya, when you were afraid to get on the fire pole.
yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, well, let's go back. And I said, okay. We went back, and now she basically could see that she needed to do this, and it just looked like that. She did it. We got back in the car, and she was bigger, better, braver. So
I think when we're younger, it's so easy to challenge ourselves on a daily basis because there's so many small little goals, like you're describing, going to the playground and climbing up something for the first time. And that as we get older, we get stuck in our routines. We get into the autopilot mode that you describe, and we stop challenging ourselves.
exactly.
And I really firmly believe that only through challenging ourselves do we realize our full potential. And I really thank you for speaking to it so well today. As we're, you know, kind of transitioning into the Q&A section of our discussion today, I'd love to know whether there's any imparting information you'd like to share before we go ahead and open it up for questions.
Just that if you go to my website, which is Nancy Picard Life Coach, on my homepage, you can order the book right there. You can pre-order the book there. And at the bottom of that same page, if you put in the date or your pre-order from, let's say, Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, whatever, then when the book comes out, you will also get a reader's guide, which is about an 11 or 12 page supplement that will have more exercises, because I teach a course. So if you don't ever end up taking my Bigger, Better, Braver coaching courses, you will get this supplement for pre-ordering. It's like the pre-order gift. And if you want to do Bigger, Better, Braver, the book as a book club, you'll have ideas and exercises in this reader's guide. So it's just, if you do it on the website and put that, or do it on Amazon and then go to my website, at the bottom of the first page, you'll get the reader's guide when the book comes out. That's
Perfect.
really
Thank you.
all my advice.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'd love to open it up to any questions that any of our participants may have.
Basically, if you do this symbol width, it'll be 34.05 inches.
Okay.
Just kind of add those up.
Anna, it seems like there might be some talking in the background. If you're able to mute yourself, or if you do have a question for us, feel free to jump in with one.
Oh, so I can see the chat too.
Yeah, definitely.
Laura says, I love what you said about your grandchildren living bigger, better, braver. How can I teach my children to teach my grandchildren the philosophy? Yeah, Laura, that's a great question. Thank you. So, I mean, I talk about it with my kids. And so I would just invite them to that conversation. I would invite them to recognize that there is a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and that you want your grandchildren to have a growth mindset. And that comes from not being afraid to try new things, even if you don't do them well. So like when my grandchildren do something, I don't actually tell them, oh my God, you did that so well. I talk about, that's so exciting that you were willing to try that. Like I would have that conversation with your kids. You can tell them, this is what my friend says, if you don't want them to take it out on your own, Laura.
Laura, great job throwing your question in the chat box. If anybody does have questions, again, you can drop those in the chat box, or you could always unmute yourself briefly and ask the question out loud. And don't be shy. There is never such thing as a silly question. Well, since nobody is jumping in immediately, I have one.
Okay, I can't see it. Hold on. Go ahead.
Nancy, would you climb Kilimanjaro again?
I would climb Kilimanjaro again. I wouldn't train as hard.
That was going to be my second question.
I wouldn't train as hard. I trained for 6 months and I ended up with adrenal fatigue. So I wouldn't train as hard the next time. And I would do it again if somebody, like if my kids wanted to go, or my sisters wanted to go, which I'm pretty safe feeling that my sister. But if my kids
not happening.
What? Oh, my sister's laughing in the background. Yeah. If my kids wanted to go, I would do that. If my grandkids wanted to go, and I mean, I think by the time my grandkids could do it, I won't be able to do it anymore. So it would only have to happen in the next few years. But I loved it. I thought it was an amazing, when you're at the top of that summit, you are actually, you stop and say, there are so few people in the world that can ever see this view. Like you just can't even, it's spectacular and it's life-changing. It's life-changing. So I recommend it highly. It shows you what you're capable of, and it helps you just have more self-love and self-worth for yourself, which any challenge can do. Any bigger, better, braver, anything that you dream about doing and you put in action to doing it, and you step outside your comfort zone and you face your fear, but you move forward in faith anyway. Any of those things, staying in alignment with what you say you want to do, creates more self-trust, more self-worth, and more self-love.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Go now.
Nancy, I think your presentation was great. Bigger, better, braver should inspire a lot of people.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. He's my brother-in-law, so he's biased, but thank you, Ray.
Well, isn't our family, or aren't our family our toughest critics?
Yes. Yep.
Sometimes, for sure, that's true.
Any last questions? Do you have some more time here? All right. Well, I want to really thank everybody for joining us today. Specifically, of course, thank Nancy again for leading us in today's discussion. Nancy's website again is simply nancybicardlifecoach.com. And yeah, thank you again, everybody.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
That was great, Nancy. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Mary. Mary,
Thank you.
look like you've got your scarf on in your house too.
I have my
Getting ready in case somebody
ready
shows
to
up.
isolate. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was really great.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.